Hey, how's it going, guys? This is Technical Tim here, and I want to thank all of you who've been liking all my videos and subscribing to the channel. And I'd really appreciate if you gave this video a thumbs up or subscribe if you haven't already. And sorry, yeah, we got audio this week. I'll get back to video format soon. Literally, next video I do. That's not a podcast. I'll make sure that it's video format again. But sorry for no content last week. And essentially, what happened was we recorded Gugabe and I, and he was traveling the States. And I had a very, very busy week just with some personal issues that came up, and also kind of getting in the groove of this new puppy that I got. Although it's starting to get a lot easier to take care of him now. So we weren't able to, we were able to record, but I couldn't re-record. I just didn't have time, and I did my best to try to get some content out, but technology did not allow us. And just because Gugabe was traveling and I was going through my stuff, it made it a little chaotic. So that's the reason for lack of content. And I know people don't always like recap videos, but I thought I should send out a recap video so you could at least hear my thoughts from a continuity standpoint on UFC 248. And I can just go through each fight and talk about kind of what I was thinking before and after each fight. And yeah, I was actually in Vegas for the card. I didn't go to the event. I just kind of watched it at a sports book because I just like don't like sitting at UFC events for 8 hours, and I kind of like being able to just kind of move around at will, have my computer out and stuff. And so yeah, I watched it at a sports book. My girlfriend and I watched it. I gotta give a shout out to her for dealing with a UFC weekend all weekend in Vegas. But also met Gugabe for the first time. He was in Chicago where I live, so that was kind of cool. And then we had a beer in Vegas and kind of just hung out for a little bit there. So it was cool to meet Gugabe. I know he went to the event. But anyway, enough about all that kind of rambling. I'll just go through the card. I ended up being profitable on this event. I did hit every bet. I had a 1 unit play on Joanna. That was the one bet that I missed, though. I hit every other bet. But I'll kind of just go through. Like I said, whenever I have bad events or good events, I try to just... obviously you're happier when you have good events, but I kind of just try to reflect on it the best I can to improve myself going forward as a bettor, and then I just kind of move on and don't let it really bother me too much, whether or not I win or lose. But I'll go through it. Dana Batgarel, he knocked out Guido Canetti. Honestly, I kind of leaned him a little bit, but he doesn't have a ton of UFC experience, and he was inactive for the last couple years, but he kind of just keeps a good volume and is a pretty good technical striker. And Canetti just kind of he's kind of just a takedown guy and doesn't really land many strikes, and so it was kind of a binary fight. But I did tend to lean Batgarel here, but it wasn't enough for me to play him, and he looked good. It was a good performance, and that was a nice knockout by him. And Chikese and Emmers, I thought this was a close fight. Funny about this, I live bet Chikese after round 2 at plus 130. I'm not one of those guys who just like claims I win a bunch on live betting. I can't get that much action down, but I probably win a little more than I lose in live betting. But I don't, like most of my action comes on pre-fight betting, but on this I ended up hitting, I think I just threw like $200 on Chikese plus 130 or something after round 2, because I saw it as he got ahead a clear round 1, and I leaned him round 2, although it was competitive, but I kind of thought there was like a 50-50 chance he already had the fight won. So why not? And then even when he lost round 3 clearly, I still thought that I probably won the bet, and it was plus money. So I kind of just, yeah, like I thought I had crazy value, and he could have still won the third round, which just makes the bet even better. So I did hit that, but Emmers, I feel like he should have probably went to his wrestling earlier in the fight, and yeah, but he kind of just didn't, and it ended up being a pretty close fight. And I think either guy winning would have been fine. It was close though. Let's go Mearshart and Win. I didn't bet on this fight. I thought Win kind of fought poor here. I feel like he shouldn't have respected the guard game of Mearshart as much. And I know he got subbed on the ground, but it's because he got taken down himself. I feel like if he would have initiated the wrestling, and it's not like he had to go wrestle the entire time. He obviously could stay competitive on the feet, although Mearshart probably got the better of him on the feet overall in the fight. It was still very competitive, and it was kind of the volume of Mearshart versus the power of Win. And then when Mearshart went to the body, then he obviously had a ton of success. But I feel like Win should have mixed in wrestling more because it could have given him some of the closer rounds. Like I feel like round one was pretty close, and he probably would have stole it with a takedown. And it's not like Mearshart's that good from his guard. He's more dangerous by setting up scrambles, and then once he gets your back. And I feel like Wynn's team should have had him mix in the wrestling more and try to sit in guard or half guard. And I feel like Wynn is a good enough wrestler with a strong enough base where he could have done that. It's not like he had to play a jiu-jitsu match here, even in guard or half guard. He could have kind of bailed out on a scramble and just went to a front headlock position, and Mearshart gets caught there all the time. And most of Mearshart's scrambles come from when you advance position. They don't come when you have half guard or you're in his guard. He's just not as dangerous there. He's honestly more dangerous when you get to mount or side control, because all of a sudden his hips come into play, or he can spin out on like side control because his legs are free. Where like if you're in his half guard or his guard, his legs aren't free to set up scrambles. And I thought it was a poor game plan, and Mearshart did a good job of adjusting to the body and kind of taking advantage of Wynn not really using his wrestling more. And like I said, it's not like Wynn had to take him down at the beginning of the round and try to lay on him for 15 minutes and do that every round. He could have struck for a while, grabbed the takedown, maybe landed some grounded pound, and if the scramble came up, just let Mearshart up, but still score the takedown, try to land some shots and hold position for a little bit, and then don't put yourself in bad positions and just stay in that front headlock and just let him up if you're getting uncomfortable with the scrambles. Like, just disengage from him. It was a really poor game plan. And I actually roomed with Duran. He's from Missouri, and so am I. We were on the cadet national team together when we were like in 7th grade or middle school, and I roomed with him. And so I always cheer for him in his fights. It doesn't mean I'm gonna bet him or anything, and I didn't bet this fight. But I kind of just thought that was a bad game plan for him, and I feel like if he fights a stand-up fight all the time, he's just not using some of the other advantages that he has in the wrestling, and at least being able to float on top a little bit. But probably ranted about that fight a little too long. Vieira, I'm not going to say much about this. He arm triangled Safarov. I also had no action on this. I had no action on the first 4 fights that I talked about. And yeah, I kind of expected Vieira to get the submission, but I don't think Safarov is all that awful to really have any interest in playing Vieira at like minus 700. And honestly, that cut, if that fight would have went on, that cut was pretty bad on Vieira. Like, it could have been a fight-ending cut. Like, I mean, I've seen fights ended on similar cuts. So, yeah, but nice one by Vieira. Madsen and Hubbard, this was literally the exact fight that I expected. And I expected Madsen to win the first round, and it was going to be kind of a matter of how tired Madsen is going to get. And the dynamic to me here was very obvious, where these European wrestlers like Matson, like Mike Grundy, and it happened with Mike Grundy against Nad Narimani, and then Mike Grundy just outperformed his striking tape and ended up beating Narimani, but he couldn't get his wrestling game going really, is these European wrestlers, they come from a freestyle wrestling or Greco-Roman wrestling base, and it doesn't emphasize holding people down. And they can hold people down if they lay in guard. So on the regionals, it looks like they have good top control, but guys just like Hubbard or just anyone who kind of knows how to wrestle on the mat can just give up their back. And Matson and Grundy aren't hook players, so usually the stand-up, that's literally how you get up in a wrestling match. You start from referee's position, and that's a similar position of where Matson and Hubbard were when Hubbard would give up his back. Then you literally stand up, get wrist control, get an underhook, spin into your opponent, and come up. And Hubbard did that pretty much every time Matson would take him down. And it's guys like Gillespie and these folk style wrestling guys, or you'll see Sambo Russian players like they're kind of hand in hand with some of the folk style wrestling guys who know how to wrestling ride people or put hooks in. But Matson, it was clear on tape that he didn't, but I still thought he would land a lot of takedowns. But I expected Hubbard, because he did this to Davi Ramos, to give up his back and get up. And it's not like Matson is a good submission grappler. He's just a good wrestler. And I expected the get-ups to get there, and it was kind of a matter of, I expected Hubbard to kind of turn it on maybe later. And it was kind of a matter of when Matson really slowed down to where he couldn't land takedowns at will anymore. And it just happened to be kind of towards the end of the second round, so Matson got round 1 and 2. And I kind of thought it was a matter of Matson's cardio, because he was going to be forced to just keep taking Hubbard down because Hubbard could get up. Because these European freestyle guys it's a very different type of wrestling. And I think you guys are I've been emphasizing that for a long time, and I think you guys are probably starting to see that. And I'm not saying I'm like and whenever I say like I've been preaching that for a long time, I'm not saying I'm like right about everything, but this is kind of a thing I tend to think I'm a little, it's one of my strengths, kind of being able to see like some of these grappling nuances. And it was pretty clear to me that Matson kind of fitted in that mold of not having very, very good top control. And I just feel like at lightweight, there's going to be guys who are good enough to make him pay for that at some point. I just feel like his game's a little limited, but I mean, he's obviously can score takedowns on people, but he'll run into a wall at some point of not being able to hold people down or even take them down. I still think there's good enough lightweights who will stop his takedowns and make him pay on the feet. O'Malley and Quinones, this is actually the first fight I had action on. I had a lot of exposure to Sean O'Malley in mini parlays, and I even played him straight even at his odds. And it's funny because when I first saw the line, I actually played Quinones over Joaquin in his last fight. And I like Quinones against regional type of fighters because he mixes it up. He lands leg kicks. He lands a lot of takedowns against the lower level competition. But I still think his competition was kind of lower level here. And the main thing I saw was just on the feet, O'Malley lands some of the most head strikes. He's only had a few fights, but still, it's been like almost 40 minutes of sample size now, and he lands some of the most head strikes you'll see, and he keeps up a ridiculous pace, and he lands hard. And Quinones does not land head strikes. He lands leg kicks. In his fight with Nathaniel Wood, he got dominated on the head strike battle, and I thought O'Malley was probably a little better of a striker than Wood, or at least in that league. And I just thought O'Malley would kind of dominate there, which he did, and it's hilarious. He outlanded Quinones 18-0. And I know it was only 2 minutes of fighting, but still, in almost a half a round, Quinones did not land a strike. And then the biggest worry for me was Quinones maybe getting takedowns and being able to get top control. But O'Malley, it was funny because for some reason I just didn't think O'Malley was a great grappler. And then when I rewatched his fights, it's just been a while, I really liked his grappling. And the only time he looked bad there was in round 3 against Sukumtab, but it was right after his leg fell off. And in round 2, he showed me good stuff. And I didn't think Quinones would be able to pass his guard much, and I thought at worst maybe he would get some top time, but I tended to think he wouldn't get a ton of top time and a ton of takedowns because I generally liked what I saw from O'Malley. And even if he did, I thought it wouldn't be enough to compensate on the over the advantages that O'Malley had on the feet. So I had a ton of exposure to him, and like honestly kind of an uncomfortable amount, but I just was very confident in it. I was definitely nervous going in, but I just felt like Quinones's win conditions were extremely limited, even at those odds. I thought O'Malley should have been a bigger favorite. Oliveira, Max Griffin, I thought this was going to be a mess, and that's pretty much what we got. So I passed Jingling and Mally or Magny. Magny looked good, and I didn't really have strong opinion. Honestly, I kind of thought Jingling would probably be the little more powerful striker, but Magny does keep up a high pace, and it's not like the Leech has beaten all that many great fighters. So it's not like he's been a consistent round winner against like really, really good guys. Like his best win is probably against Zaleski, and it's not like it's like O'Malley has been in there with a little higher competition, so I wasn't willing to play Leech or anything here. And honestly, yeah, like Magny looked good, and he kind of just dominated him, and he was probably probably the best value on the card. I'd have to think about it more, but probably the best value on the card. I mean, it just looked like he was going to pretty much win the striking battle with his straight punches and his volume and pace, and it looked like he was a little bit better of a grappler too. So yeah, good win for Magny there. I had no action on that fight. And then the next fight was Dariush and Close, and just not from a betting perspective. Like, I think I tweeted this out. Like, I don't have like a ton of favorite fighters. I don't watch, like, I'm a fan of the sport, but I watch it in a different lens, kind of just a betting perspective. And I think it's just bad to have favorite, to be too much of a fan, because it can kind of cloud your judgment when making predictions and bets. But I would say if I were to construct a list, Dariush would be in that discussion. So I was really happy. That was just a fucking awesome sequence, that fight ending sequence. That was very, very cool, just from a fan point of view. But from a betting point of view, I played Dariush 1 unit here, small, because I was a little scared. Like, I thought he had a big grappling edge, and I think that kind of showed in round 1. And I'll kind of give my opinions on round 1 in a second. But I lowered my bet. I was pretty confident he would win, but I lowered my bet because I just don't love his durability, and Close is very tough. And if Dariush did not get Close out of there, or like couldn't consistently get him down, although I did expect him to get the takedowns, then I could have just seen this getting a little sketchy. So that's why I pulled the bet back a little bit. And I'm honestly glad that I did, because even though Dariush won, this was still kind of a random result. Like, I'm not a guy who will have a bet on someone, and if it hits, I say it's easy money. There will be times where I think I have good process and a good result happens, and that's kind of deserved success. And I think there's times where, like, it's kind of like, who knows, like, even though I won, shit happens. But like, the way I see this is the sketchiness about it is, and why I think I maybe got a little lucky here, is round 2. Like, Close has never really even been hurt before, and it's not like Dariush is like a big time knockout artist. And Dariush had been tagged, and he looked a little tired, and it looked like it was going to be a swing fest. And if you said it turned into a swing fest in round 2 and someone got knocked out, I would have expected Close to win. So I will say, I think I got a little lucky in that sense. But I will say that I think round 1, I think a lot of round two happened that way because Dariush's legs were shot from holding a standing body triangle for a full round. And I will say, like, I think it's also to kind of like maybe defend the Dariush win outcome is that I feel like round one, just getting a standing body triangle and getting your legs worn out is just for like 5 minutes is kind of just random too. We're like, if Dariush, and he's fully capable, had gotten close just kind of on the mat on his back or something and didn't have to like hold a body triangle standing, because holding a body triangle standing is way more energy exerting than having it on the mat, because you can kind of rest on your back and things or you could have someone flattened out and you're just not using as much strength in your legs. So like I feel like if he would have just gotten him down, which he's fully capable of doing it like easily, that probably wouldn't have happened, and we may have not had that wild exchange in round two because of that. So it's kind of like, it was kind of just a weird outcome. So I really don't know what to think of the bet, because I think I got a pretty lucky, honestly, in round two. But I also think round one, that like a standing body triangle exchange for a full 5 minutes, I think that was a little like kind of a random too, if that makes sense. So I kind of just think of the bet as who the fuck knows. Maybe I made a bad bet. Maybe it was a good one. I'm never really going to know. But yeah, and I try to do that on every fight. I try to like think of whether or not I had good process, good luck, or a little luck or whatever. But now going on to Joanna and Zhang. I mean, everyone on Twitter is just yelling at each other over this fight before and after the fight. And I'll just give my, like, I used to try to argue with people online all the time. Or not all the time, but I would engage in some arguments, and I still guess I do a little bit, but I try to just move on and just kind of like not stress myself out over it and kind of, be annoying online about it. But I had one unit on Joanna money line, but most of my action, and I actually profited on this fight pretty decently, is I had a couple of overs, and I also played not Zhang inside the distance at minus, like, it got to like minus 140. And I think I got it, I got the wrong end of this line. I got it at like minus 170 to 80, I think. I can't really remember. But I had 2.5 units on that, and that hit, and then the overs obviously hit. And the way, I guess my justification for the overs is Joanna isn't a sub artist. So she's not going to sub Zhang, right? And she's not going to really get a ground finish. And Zhang is I don't think she's a very, like, I think she's a good striker, and she honestly really, really impressed me in this fight. But I don't, as a striker and as cardio and just kind of as an athlete, but as a grappler, I do not think she's very good. Like, I don't think she's bad. I'm just saying she's not nearly good enough to be able to dominate Joanna on the mat. And I think that was very, very clear. I honestly thought the grappling exchanges would go just like that, and they did. Zhang would kind of force a few. She would maybe land one or two, but Joanna would pop right back up or land none. And I don't even remember if she got credited for one. Let me look. But Joanna would get her underhooks and eventually go to double unders against the cage and just kind of turn into the fence. And that's pretty much what happened. And I think she got credited for one takedown, Zhang. Yeah, I thought I might have seen one in there. And she went 1 of 8. and Joanna's very hard to hold down. So what I was seeing, like, and justifying the bets on the overs, is neither girl's going to get a ground finish, because Joanna doesn't go get takedowns, and she doesn't, even though she's a great defensive grappler, she doesn't offensively grapple ever. And then Zhang, I just don't think is that great of a grappler in general, and I don't think she's nearly good enough to consistently finish Joanna there, whether it's a sub or ground strike finish. And so when you have a woman striking fight, and I know the fight got wild, but when you have a woman striking fight and the ground finishes are almost out the window. And like, I wouldn't say nothing's ever completely out the window, but very low percentage. Then you're stuck with one of these girls having to knock the other one out standing. And Joanna, um, although I thought she had a higher chance to get a knockout than her like plus 900 suggested, she doesn't knock people out at a high rate ever. Like, I mean, she was beating she's just an accumulative type of striker. She's a volume striker. So then I thought that was a pretty low percentage outcome. And then really, is Zhang just gonna knock Joanna dead? So I'm kind of stuck. Like, the ground finishes are almost gone, and so you're stuck with Joanna getting a standing knockout for the over to miss. And then I just kind of feel like that's low percentage. So it's really like Zhang knocking Joanna out. And then the funny thing is, my read on this fight, I just, Zhang historically has only landed 27 head strikes, I think it was, against Torres or something, right around that range, and then 32 versus Taylor. So it's like, she's a leg kicker and body kicker mostly historically in her career. So I kind of saw it as, you're stuck with, to hit the over, it's really a whether or not Zhang gets a standing knockout, and she doesn't even land head strikes. I just thought there was a ton of value, and I know the fight got very wild, and that almost proves my point more, is like both girls landed hard and they still couldn't knock each other out. And I just think generally if these two girls fight, like, and honestly, I think almost worst case scenario happened is we had probably one of the worst hematomas in, a women's fight ever. And if the fight still would have gotten stopped because of that, I still would have been okay with my bet, because I don't think you can predict a biological response of Joanna's head swelling up, to stop, or like a cut. I think you can predict a cut with like a Nate Diaz or something, but these two girls have never had any history of cutting bad or anything. And I think you have to just kind of predict it of whether a classic knockout will happen. I think just like doctor stoppages and stuff, you can't really always predict. And so I was totally fine with playing some of the overs, and specifically not Zhang inside the distance, because it was minus 150 or something. Like, it was right around there. So it was implying that Zhang had to win like 40 to 45% of the time inside the distance. And I just thought that was off. And so that was my justification for kind of the overs and not Zhang inside the distance. And although it got a little scary because of the hematoma, you cannot convince me that Zhang finishes Joanna like 4 out of 5 times, 40 to 50 times if they fight 100 times. I just don't think it's going to happen. And the funny thing is, if Joanna's head wouldn't have swelled up, it wasn't like Joanna was really close to getting like knocked completely unconscious on the feet. Like, she absorbed some hard shots, but these are still women's strawweight 115ers. I know Zhang hits hard compared to the rest of the division, but she still is a 115-pound strawweight. And I think Joanna's chin, it was being very overblown. She's had more striking time than any woman in the history of the UFC, and she's only been knocked unconscious one time ever. And in every other fight, she wasn't, I think she's been buckled before, but Zhang's been buckled. And if Zhang had the same amount of striking time as Joanna against the same competition, I bet Zhang would have been staggered many times too, or a few times too. So I felt like Joanna has a pretty, like, actually above average chin, and I think that kind of showed. So that was my justification. And then I also played a unit on Joanna money line, and I had just some people that I actually really respect kind of question me on why I was going more on the inside, on the over / Zhang, not Zhang inside the distance. And it was because a lot of people thought Zhang was kind of KO or bust, and I didn't see it that way. I thought her chance of winning by a decision were greater than inside the distance, hence my not inside the distance play. But then and the reason why I thought she had a good, because one, I thought the fight was going to the cards in general, and I thought Joanna had a very good chance to win, but I thought this was likely going to the cards. And so when it goes to a decision in a women's striking fight, shit happens. And, we ended up getting a close decision here. But I also expected Zhang to probably win the early, maybe the first round, and be competitive for the first two. And then I expected Joanna to kind of take over, which she won round 3, I think, in my opinion, clear. And then I expected her to kind of take over and honestly, like, win. But I didn't really know about Zhang's cardio. And then Zhang ended up having elite cardio, which I don't think anyone could have. I don't think you could have predicted it was honestly better than Joanna's. Like, her cardio may have been better than Joanna's after watching that fight. And then Zhang just kind of, her cardio kicked in, and then she ended up winning a decision. And I was just worried that more the early rounds, Zhang could keep this competitive and then always maybe steal another round later. I did not expect her to kind of win the later rounds and almost out-cardio Joanna. I don't think either girl really out-cardioed each other, but I did expect if this fight went late that Joanna would have an advantage, and Zhang proved me wrong. But still, like, I also factored that into the equation that it was possible that Zhang had a good gas tank too. And I just feel like in women's striking fights, you don't get not inside the distance lines that often when the main path for Zhang to get the win or the inside the distance is a standing KO. And I just thought that was like crazy value. And I thought the money line before the fight, I thought the value was on Jędrzejczyk. And after watching the fight, I still probably think the money was on the value was on Jędrzejczyk, but I still think it was almost more value on the not inside the distance line, in my opinion. And so, yeah, sorry about my rambling, but that was kind of my decision to go heavier on the overs and not inside the distance. And as far as the fight itself, just kind of from a non-betting perspective, I thought it was a very close fight. And I personally, even though I had Joanna, I personally scored it for Zhang but like, it was very close, honestly. And I thought, I almost thought no rounds were clear. Even like people were acting like Zhang or Joanna had very clear rounds. And the only round that I thought was kind of clear, but not totally clear, was Joanna round 3. Like, I thought she won that round, and all 3 judges did. That was the only unanimous round of the fight. Every other round, there was no unanimous, meaning like the judges were all over giving each girl a round. But in round 3, everyone went Joanna, and that was the round live that I thought Joanna won clear, but it wasn't like clear to where I thought she won it unanimous either. Then every other round, even like rounds people thought Zhang won more clear than others, like round 1, I thought that was a close round too. And then even like, I think round 4 maybe was a round people thought Joanna won clear, and I didn't agree with that either. I thought, who the fuck knew? Like, it was fucking wild and very competitive. But having said all that, I feel like you have to look at judges here. You can't go look at numbers and then watch a fight in depth and then give your scorecard and then yell at the judges for deviating from that. You have to, like, the judges score it in the moment. So they don't have like a ton of time to think. And so that is, so like, I think sometimes, like, the judges are awful. Like, there's sometimes the rounds are just like completely terrible, but close rounds like that, and kind of like the John Jones Reyes, like round 2 and 3, I think it wasn't like both people had their moments, and you have to judge it, and you have like 10 seconds you have like a minute in between rounds to judge, and it's just wild in there. And I try to put myself in their shoes in the moment, and what I probably would have done, I guess, and what I think is maybe reasonable, and that's why I don't think this was a robbery or anything, and I don't think anyone's really claiming, who's thinking with a level head, that this was a robbery. I think either girl could have won. But when you have very close rounds and one girl's head is completely swollen like that, I think it's reasonable to then give it to Zhang because the damage was there on Joanna. But at the same time, and so, like, that's why I would have probably in the moment, if I was a judge, I probably would have been like, who the fuck won that? I don't even fucking know who won that round. That was so close. Let's give it to Zhang because I do think damage should matter. But at the same time, I did think round 3 was pretty clear for Joanna, and there was a couple rounds where I kind of thought she maybe outlanded her, so I could see where you could get to a scorecard for her too. And I feel like 48, just every round could have went to either girl. Like, I don't even fucking know. So I guess that's kind of my opinion. I do think if Joanna's head wouldn't have swollen like that, all she needed was one scorecard on one judge's, one round on one judge's scorecard to win that fight. That's all she needed. And I do think, and she lost on a lot of the judges' scorecards 4 and 5. And I feel like if her head wasn't swelled like that, the optics wouldn't have looked as bad, and she probably would have gotten one of those rounds and probably would have won the fight. So I do think the head swelling came in to factor, and it should, in my opinion. Damage is a big deal, but I guess from a predictive standpoint, you can't know Joanna's head is you can't like predict biological responses unless if someone has a history of cuts or something. So sorry that I really ranted on that, but I just wanted to give my opinion on it. And I know there's a lot of arguments online of whether or not people had good or bad bets, and I have my opinion. I think Zhang honestly really impressed me, but my opinion is Joanna can definitely win that fight, and she closed at plus 200, so I tend to think the value is probably on her, but I'm not going to cry about it either, and I thought Zhang probably won, so I kind of just have like a neutral opinion on the fight as a whole, I guess is what I'm trying to say. But it was an awesome fight. Really fucking good fight. And I do think also Jędrzejczyk fought with a pretty terrible game plan. Like, she actually outlanded Zhang 196 to 170 on the numbers, and she landed at 51% where Zhang only landed at 40. But I feel like she should have not exchanged in the pocket as much, kind of like how she fought Andrade, and she should have just kind of turned it into a leg kick and body kick type of game where she had a big advantage in the body kicks and evading them as well. And I mean, she landed 32 of 47 body strikes, and they kept being there. And then the leg kicks were dead even, 58-58. So, like, I feel like she should have played that game where power doesn't come into play as much, if that makes sense. But then the head strike battle was dead even, 96-96, and Joanna kept engaging in that. And I just feel like Zhang has more power, so why engage her? Like, even if you guys land the same amount of strikes, Zhang is probably getting the better of it because she lands a little harder. Even though I want to like say this too, Joanna hurt Zhang in that fight too. Like, Zhang had a lot of damage. I know her head didn't swell up, but there were times where I thought Joanna even, I wouldn't say I was like, oh, this is going to be a finish here, but I was thinking there was a chance for a finish if Joanna kept landing that clean. But I just felt like Joanna shouldn't have engaged in a head strike battle here, even though she tied Zhang on the numbers to the head and landed at a far more efficient clip, 96 of 230, and Zhang only landed 96 of 305. But Zhang is the heavier hitter, so why engage her in that battle that often? I understand there's going to be times where just the exchanges are there and you have to defend yourself and you have to kind of use your technique instinctually. But I feel like the overall game plan should have been more of a flee of foot type of game and try to land your body kicks and keep it a leg kicking battle where the power difference isn't nearly as big. And Joanna actually has, I think, underrated power in some of her kicks. But yeah, that's kind of the way I saw the fight. And Zhang honestly really impressed me. I still do. I've seen it in other fights and even in this, just the way Joanna was able to easily shuck by some double underhooks and get her back standing. I see holes in Zhang's grappling that I don't think would be exposed by all that many women, because there's not like many great women grapplers, but I do think there are a few girls who will give her issues there, like a Tatiana Suarez and even a Virna Jandiroba, or just other kind of takedown jiu-jitsu type of artists. I do think they could give her issues, and I do think if she fought Suarez and Suarez was a dog, I would play Suarez personally. But like in a striking type of fight, Zhang is kind of a nightmare. But that's my opinion on that fight. Sorry for the long rant, but it was just a great fight, so I wanted to talk about it a lot. But yeah. Then Israel and Romero. I had Israel in like a small two-legger with O'Malley, and I just kind of thought it was KO for Romero, but the decision, because of the timidity, I guess something maybe I did overlook and it kind of played out here, is the timidity that Romero forces you to have by just being such a freak athlete and having so much power, that even when Israel's the much overall like better striker as far as consistently landing strikes and just being able to fight backwards going more, and just kind of having stylistic advantages, such as Romero keeps a high guard a lot, so it would open up body kicks, and that's the reason why I bet Costa over Romero, because of volume, and I thought the body kicks would be open. But even though like Israel has all those advantages on paper, I do think maybe I overlooked the fact that this fight could have been a little closer round by round because of the timidity that Romero kind of forces out of you. Having said that, I still think it's kind of one of those things where, like, yeah, I got Israel in like minus a little over -2, and I think like -230 or something. Maybe it was -250. I forget what I got him at, but maybe you want a little more dominant performance, so I didn't like the bet from that standpoint. But at the same time, I don't see how Romero ever dominates a round there either. Like, I feel like if anyone was to get really clear rounds, it would be Israel, and I thought he had the semi-clear rounds here in general. But I just feel like if they fought 100 rounds, the only way Romero's ever going to really win a dominant round here is if he lands big shots. So it kind of just played into my pre-fight thoughts of kind of big shots or KO or bust for Romero. And I felt like Israel could consistently land more when he kind of decided to at times. But so it's kind of like a whatever bet. Like, I don't think it was a great bet. I don't think it was the worst bet I've ever made. It was just kind of whatever. Not like super happy with it. Not like super upset with myself. But as far as the fight itself, I thought that Israel won rounds 2, 3, and 4 kind of clear, in my opinion. And I know neither guy landed a lot, but you kind of have to look at it relatively. And Israel was consistently landing more strikes in those rounds. And I know sometimes you have to look at the impact of the strikes, but it wasn't like Yoel even landed anything big in those rounds either. And I thought Israel was having the more significant moments too, with the leg kicks that were clearly buckling Yoel, like not severely, but they were happening, and you could tell Yoel didn't love them. And it was way more damage than I think really Yoel caused against Adesanya in rounds 2 through 4. Then rounds 1 and 5, I think I gave Yoel round 1 simply because the strikes were 4-2. So it's hard to give Adesanya around when he only wins 2 strikes. And even though Yoel basically landed nothing either, he did have one good overhand that landed early in the round, and I thought that was totally enough to give him that round. But still, when it's 4-2, you cannot be confident that either fighter won a round. And then I thought round 5 was very competitive. I kind of chalked it up as a 50-50. And I think the strike count was very close. It was kind of like the leg strike of Israel and Yoel landing some head strikes here and there, and I just thought it was 50-50. I'm fine with either guy getting it. So I thought the Yeah, and then like I said, I thought 2 through 4 were not the most dominant rounds, but I thought they were. I just see it hard to give them to Yoel because he really didn't land much, and Israel was at least landing some effective leg kicks throughout those rounds. So I see it as like Israel winning 3-2 or 4-1, probably 3-2, but 4-1 is fine too. Just depends on how you give round 5. But as far as the performance, I thought it was a good performance by Israel. Like I know it isn't as that exciting, but not many people can kind of play off the back foot on blitzes like that and anticipate them and kind of have the ability to then circle off laterally to stay out of danger, because Yoel's an athletic freak, and just to do it for 5 rounds and not worry about the crowd booing and kind of deviate from your game plan. Like I thought it showed just a lot of patience and skill, because a lot of people just don't have footwork like that. And I thought it was very smart for Israel to land his leg kicks to put money in the bank throughout a few rounds and not expose himself into danger. And as far as like what this fight does for him in his career, he's had like 6, 7, I forget how many fights he's had, but he's had like 6, let's say, around that number, I think. And almost every performance has been ultra impressive and exciting at times. And then just like one performance like this, I don't think all it takes is him knocking out Costa or having a fun fight his next fight for people to quickly forget about this. And also, I know like that Joanna fight's fun, but that probably, like, Joanna only got paid a couple $100,000 for that fight. Like I hope she got paid more, but that's going. I would say like if she doesn't get like a locker room bonus of like a significant amount of money, I would say getting only a couple $100,000 for a fight like that, she probably lost money in the long run for just a loss of future earnings, because I do not think she's going. I think that's going to shorten her career, that fight. I mean, that was ridiculous. And just, I like any health issues in the short term, which I'm sure some are covered obviously by the UFC, but just some short-term issues that she could have, or just long-term health issues. Honestly, the expenses of that are probably greater. So you can criticize Israel, but he just got out of a fight with Yoel Romero, and Yoel honestly has like changed people's careers. Like look at Rockhold, and I mean, he went to war with Whitaker, and Israel literally got out of the fight pretty much completely unscathed. So he's still the champion. He got the win. He gets his championship pay going forward, and he also took no damage, so it's just going to extend his career going forward. And you know, if he got into a war with Yoel, that could limit his career by even just like 2 years. That could be like 5 fights of future pay. And so he'll also have a higher chance to win his fights later because he took no damage. So I think it was a good performance, and I think it was a smart performance to kind of play the matador a little bit and just land leg kicks and not exchange with Romero. I thought he did a good job. But that is my thoughts today, in total for this card. And I just wanted to do this because I didn't get to put out content last week, and I just wanted you guys to have some audio type of content of me discussing the fights, so you kind of knew where I was at, what I thought about them, and to kind of just continue and kind of just keep up the continuity of the content going into the next card as well. And I'm going to be doing a podcast with Gugabe talking about the Oliveira Lee card probably tomorrow, so I will upload that tomorrow. And I will get back to doing my live chats on Friday. Sorry I could not do it last week, but I hope you enjoyed this. Sorry if I rambled on a little bit too much, but I just thought I would just kind of give you my thoughts, and that was kind of my thoughts on them. So thank you so much, guys, and look out for the next podcast with Gugabe and I should be coming out tomorrow. Thank you.